Hi, welcome back to another episode of a Masteration Core. Today we're going to talk about Sprint. Sprint is an event in Scrum. So what is Sprint? So at the basic level, if you look at what Scrum Guide said, Sprint is basically a time box. So what's a time box? A time box is basically a specific set of time that has a beginning and an end, and it's kind of like a box. There is an inside and outside. So in other words, inside the sprint or outside the sprint, right? It's set as a beginning and an end. What's the duration of a sprint? Normally, it's anywhere between 1 week to 4 weeks. Now, from what I have experienced, most teams, the ideal length is about 2 weeks. It is good enough where it's not too long, and it is short enough where it allows us to get feedback. If you do less than 2 weeks, if you're doing a 1 week sprint, more power to you, and that's awesome, and that's okay. Okay? The more feedback we get, the better off we are. Remember that, right? We want short, quick feedback loop. So ideally, I would say from my experience, most teams kind of have the sweet spot around 2 weeks. If your teams are running 4 weeks, and that's fine too. Okay, it's just based on the situation. From my experience, it's been 2 weeks. All right. So when do you start a sprint? Now, most often times when I start working with teams, I see teams doing the typical where they start at the beginning of the week, which is on a Monday, and they end on the following Friday. Now, I have a problem with that. And here are the reasons why I don't like to start on a Monday and on a Friday. Number one is that if you are in the US, holidays tend to fall somewhere in the middle of Monday or Friday. And that's kind of odd. If you look at calendars throughout the year, you start noticing a pattern. It kind of along those Monday in the beginning of the week or in the week. So what happens is then it kind of threw the sprint off because you don't want to extend a sprint. A sprint's kind of fixed. So you don't want to do that. So for me, ideally, I like that somewhere in the middle. I like Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning, I think to me, is the perfect time to start a sprint. For co-locate teams, I usually start a sprint on a Wednesday morning and it ends on a Tuesday afternoon. That allows teams to have a good start. So on Tuesday evening, team members can go home, relax, have your mind cleared, and come back the next morning fresh again to start the sprint. The other reason why I think middle of the week is good is for teams that are dealing with distributed teams. And if you have team members that are not in the same time zone, what you're going to find is that if you start on a Monday, you may have team members that either haven't started or have already started their week. So sprint starts and ends. There is no in between. There is no gap in between when the sprint starts and when the sprint ends. So what that means is that if you end the sprint on a Friday, it may be a Friday for you, and your Monday may start in your specific time zone. You have team members, for example, in India that has already started their Monday. So guess what? That's a gap. There you got, maybe 5-6 team members that's not working or not doing anything. So you don't want that. Okay? So that's the other reason why you want to do that. Okay? Start and stop at the same time, ideally in the middle of the week. Is it fixed? That's often some of the questions I get is that, well, my sprint is a week. The next time I do it is 2 weeks. Next time I do it is 3 weeks. It rotates between 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It goes all over the places. The answer is don't do that. And here's the reason why I don't do it. And I recommend not to do it. It's because does your day, how many hours are there in a day for you? 24 hours, right? Is it 25? Is it 23? Is tomorrow 26 hours? No, it's always 24 hours in a day. Same thing here, same concept apply. When your sprint starts, it starts. When the sprint ends, it ends. It doesn't extend. Some people extend it because, well, my project isn't done, so I'm extending my sprint. Don't do that, right? Your time box is a time box. what your work is different. Okay, work comes into the sprint, it flows in the sprint, your time is always set. The reason why it's set is partly is because, one, it allows us to have this fixed baseline we can use, allow us to collect data. How many points or how many stories do we complete in these 2 weeks? Over time, because the time is fixed, we can now have a forecasting. We have data analysis. Says, across the last 4 sprints, our velocity is X. So it allows us to do that because your baseline is fixed. So fix it, don't extend it. Well, what happens if there's a holiday? What happens, especially, for me in the US, end of the year, Christmas time, a lot of people take time off. What if my sprint falls in those, in those weeks where there is a, in between there's a holiday, where there is a Christmas holiday, where half my team is not available for half the sprint, for example, or even so that for the 2 weeks nobody's around. Well, guess what? There's no work done at those 2 weeks, so no work's done. Or if in that 2 weeks only half the sprint is half, only 5 days of work is available, and half the time nobody's available, and that's okay. You just reduce the capacity. That's all. That means that during that sprint, less work is done. It's okay if you see that fluctuation, because over time we will get this set non-velocity. That's what we use it for. There is up, there is down, and it's okay. Use that data to help you. So fix it. If there's a holiday, just reduce the amount of work that you pull in, reduce the capacity. Okay, that's all it is. So what you want is that you want team to commit. You want the team to commit to doing something within that set time frame. Now, when I say commitment, it is not a guaranteed to be done, but a commitment to do their best to get the work done. And I'm not asking for people to do, overtime and everything like that. Just based on a standard regular time, so that we can collect the good data, a good baseline. We're not stressing the system. Is on a normal 2 weeks time span, it should be fixed. Whatever doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. All right, so that allows us to collect data. So it's important for us to fix it. It's important for us to have it in this same set of length throughout. Now, if you need to change it, if you want to switch from a 2 week sprints to a 1 week sprints to try things out, by all means, do it. But don't keep doing it, 1 time 2 weeks, 1 time, don't do it. But give yourself enough time to see if you have data collected. Okay? So one, it should be fixed, the length should be fixed. Start and stop on the same day. Don't go, sometimes Monday, sometimes don't do that. All right, always start on the same day. Okay? When do you end a sprint? Is it a time when you cancel a sprint? Throughout my experience, I would say very rarely do you cancel a sprint. It does happen, and had happened to me before, where the company has pivoted. There's the work no longer needed for that sprint. All the goals in the sprint has just been void. So in that instance, yes, you do cancel your sprint. Most of the times you don't, because you tend to know what's coming down the pipe, because it's 2 weeks. Remember, right? If it's 2 weeks fixed, it's good enough for us to know what's coming in the next 2 weeks. We do tend to know that. Okay, so you don't cancel it. You don't change time. What else? What else is people talking about sprint? If I haven't covered those questions and you have something in mind, comment below. Ask the questions. I'll be more than happy to share my experience with you. So a sprint is a time box. It is a set time, either 2 weeks or 1 week, all the way up to 4 weeks. Ideally, I would say 2 weeks is the sweet spot. The length of it, don't change the length of it. When it starts, when it ends. Best practices will be somewhere in the middle of the week, like a Wednesday, and it should end, the day before, ideally. Or, you can find a time spot that makes sense. Oh, that does remind me now, for teams that are distributed, you're not going to have that break, right? Because some of the teams may have a nighttime, and the other team may be working during nighttime, so you don't have that clean break. And that's okay. What you end up doing is that you need to get to an agreement of when your sprints actually end. find a specific GMT time. I use sprint. What I use is the sprint review or the retro. Retro is the last thing you do. I use retro as my signal, right? To me, the sprint ends when we are ready for our sprint review, because after that, there shouldn't be any more work. So I use it usually to close out my sprint. If you're using software like Jira, I use that to close out the sprint at that point in time. And then retro happens, right? So that's kind of more, for us to calculate data and things like that. Usually when teams get to sprint reviews, when I stop it, when we finish sprint planning, when I start sprints. So that's in Jira, and in Rally, that's like different. You don't have that, so that's kind of sad. So there's those things that comes into play. What else is there? I talk about delays, I talk about holidays, talk about when is a good day to it as a time box. I think that's all about sprint event, right? So that's all about sprint event that I've covered. Let me know if you have questions. If this is your first time here, click on subscribe so you can continuously get updated on videos like this. This channel is about Agile, about Scrum, and this is where I share my experiences.